In this lesson, we're going to discuss a declarative approach to iterating over an object. Now, in the previous lesson, we looked at the for in loop, which is more of the traditional imperative way of iterating over an object, and it also gives us the benefit of, if we'd like, being able to iterate over any inherited properties. Now, I don't know about you, but typing for const property in my object every single time seems a bit over the top and a bit cumbersome. So there's actually a really nice approach that we can take, and the answer lies on the object itself. Now for this, we're going to use something called object.keys. Now before we do, I'm going to console log this out for you so you can see what it returns us. Now when we save this out, you can see that we now have an array of all the keys. We have the ID, the name, and the price. Now this doesn't go all the way down and start going deep into nested object keys. If you want to do that, you'd have to do drink.price, and that would give you sale and full. But this method returns you an array of all the top level keys. Now, unlike our in operator, which looked up the prototype, this in fact doesn't. So it won't return us any inherited properties, as I just mentioned. Now that we've got an array, we can in fact use a for each. Now we haven't jumped into arrays just yet, but this will be covered in more detail in the next chapter where we talk about arrays and array methods. But essentially, this is a declarative way that we can iterate over our object. Now this will give us the prop, and it will also give us the index. So when we log these out, we can see them in the browser. We can have prop and index. So here we have ID with an index of 0, name 1, price 2. So now we've got the property names. It's actually quite easy for us, and we don't really need this index unless you'd like to use it. So I'm just going to get rid of it in my example. Now all we need to do is now drink square bracket property, and we now have all of the object values. So you can see by this really easy functional style programming approach that we can iterate over an object and easily get the values as well. We also get the benefit of having some nice function scoping as well. And remember, this approach does not iterate over any inherited properties, which means that we do not have to say if drink has own property and so on. So we don't need this in this example because it only iterates over those. So it cleans up our code even more. And just like the loop in the last video that we saw, we can access the values and the property names whenever we like in a nice easy style. Now what I want to demonstrate is object.entries while we're here. So we can pass in our drink and we'll see something quite interesting. So you see we have an array, and we have an array, an array, and an array. Now for each property, it gives us an array of both the property name and the value. So you can see inside of here, when we expand this, we now have object.entries giving us the ID and the value, the name and the value as well. So this is quite a nice utility function, and I'd recommend that you have a look at this object in a bit more detail and start logging out things, have a play with it and deepen your understanding. Now we would in fact be here all day if we were going to have a look at every single item on the object prototype. Now before we close off this video, I just want to show you how we can make this even more concise by using an arrow function instead. So instead of having our full function definition, this anonymous function, we can do something like this, where we just have the prop, and then we're just console logging it out. So I mentioned that my favorite style of using these arrow functions is purely for callback things like this. I don't typically try and define functions using arrow functions, as I like the readability of our function keyword. So this is the declarative way. We're declaring to JavaScript how we want to iterate this object rather than telling the computer how to work it out for us, which is our imperative style code.